we have someone who is going to share how she's been able to use her voice to steer her career as a minority woman and how she's done that so that you can also use these tips and understand what it takes to steer your career and advocate for yourself. So we have Dr. Monique Sendze. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ivna, for having me.
So Dr. Monique Sendze is the Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at California State University, Chico. She has previously been the CIO at another university and Chief Operating Officer at a company in Spain. We were there for a while. She's a CIO multiple award winner, and she has an undergrad in English, a master's in Management Information Technology, PhD in Education and Organizational Leadership and Development. And we're going to learn more about how you got there. How did you achieve so much? So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Monique. And if you could initially just give us a little bit of context about yourself.
Happy to. I really love this conversation. So first, let me just start by saying that I immigrated to the US from my home country, Cameroon, almost 30 years ago now. How time flies, I can't even believe that. And when I came here 30 years ago, it was really with a goal to pursue a doctorate in education. Now, however, when I got here, things turned out a little differently than I had imagined. I had two very special women in my life, my two older sisters, who were both already in IT careers at the time, and they encouraged me to pursue a career in IT. Now, keep in mind, when I came here from Cameroon, I already had a master's degree in education, and I was already a teacher educator in my home country, Cameroon. But at the same time, I had very little exposure to computers throughout my undergrad and grad school education back then in Cameroon. So I thought there was no way I could succeed in the IT field, but they surrounded me with the right tools and resources to be successful. They got me mentorship with some leaders in the IT industry who guided me towards attaining several industry certifications in IT. And I ended up pursuing a second master's degree and earned a master's of science in management information technology. Together with my certifications and my two master's degree, I got into a male-dominated career, determined to chart my path and make it to top leadership role in IT and business. I ended up working my way up the chain in roles such as IT support specialist, IT help desk person. I was a network administrator at one point. I was an email exchange administrator at one point, and then I became an IT manager. And then leading up to my senior leadership roles as IT director, CIO, like you said earlier, chief operating officer. I was even a chief technology and innovation officer, and then vice president in the public and private industry. Now, the path to getting where I am today has not been easy. And I know the path to getting where I plan on going will not be easy, but I hope it will be easier because I will stand on the shoulders of many women before me who have paved the way. I never let my goal of getting that doctoral degree die. I came to pursue that in 1995, so I never let that goal elude me. And in all of this, while still working, I persisted and my doctorate of education in organizational leadership with an emphasis in organizational development in 3 years, in 2019, 24 years later than I had originally wanted to. So that's my journey.
Well, there's a couple of lessons just there. One is that even if you don't get what you want immediately, it took you 24 years to get your PhD. You went off different directions, you're exploring, but you achieved that goal. And there's so many milestones that you've achieved in your career. And I think it's interesting as well to show that, yeah, you started off in the IT world as an IT help desk, and you made it all the way up to chief information officer. And a lot of people who are currently maybe at that IT help desk wonder, how do you do that? Because not a lot of people are able to get there. as a woman in a field that is very male dominated, on top of that, being a Black woman, an immigrant woman, there's so many barriers that most people would feel overwhelmed by and feel like, no, I'm never going to do it. I'm not even going to try. It's too much. So I'd be fascinated to learn more about what were some of the defining professional moments and conversations. You talk about how important it is to use your voice. So how have you used your voice to have some of those career breakthroughs that kept you moving forward and forward each time?
So great. I would really want to start with talking about my most defining professional experience that led to breakthrough in my career, my leadership. And it was really around discovering the power of vulnerability in leadership. A lot of times we think that when we're a leader, vulnerability is a weakness. But when I had this breakthrough, I really understood the power of vulnerability in leadership. I spent a better part of my career wearing protective masks, knowing that the safest place for me to be is when I wear the mask of a high-performing, capable, smart, achieving woman of color, right? But the thing I've also learned is when I've taken the courage and the bravery and honesty to drop down those masks and open myself up emotionally, expose myself and let people into my world of fears, uncertainty, self-doubt, and feeling of pain, it has been very rewarding. But it has not been easy, right? To open up yourself like that is not an easy thing. But now, over 25 years in several leadership roles, and having matured through my leadership journey, I am a little bit more comfortable at lowering those masks and openly sharing my vulnerability with not only the teams that I lead, but with even my peers. And as I look at this, I really take some lessons from Brene Brown's playbook and really dare to drop the armor that protects me from feeling vulnerable. And I open myself up to the experiences that bring purpose and meaning to my life as a leader, to my life as a mother, to my life as a wife, a friend, a community member, and just to learn not to compartmentalize myself, but really bring my whole self to the table. So let me share a story. Okay?
Yes, please.
Flashback to May 25th, 2020, right? George Floyd took his last breath. On camera, all of us saw that under the knee of a law enforcement officer on the streets of Minneapolis. His death mapped a pivotal point in US race history and catalyzed a resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement. At the time, I was working for an elite STEM university where I was the only person of color in a senior leadership role. I realized the national relevance of racial equality and these events and the impact of these events on my staff and my team. So I decided that worrying about being judged was not an option as their leader, right? And so I had to do something. And doing nothing for me at that point in time was not an option. So I reached out to an HR professional with whom I had built a trusting relationship and told her what I wanted to do. She agreed to help me facilitate some conversations with my team around these issues and topics. It was very uncomfortable, right? I didn't know how they were going to react. I was putting myself out there, but we had our first roundtable session on race and social justice in America on Friday, June 12th of 2020. It was an opportunity for us to have open and difficult conversations about race and really various social justice issues and to share our viewpoints and experiences and what this really meant for them as people and as IT professionals and for the university. One by one, team members started talking about their own personal experiences with race. And those that had the opportunity for racial and cultural integration, and those who did not. And my team members that were minority origin were generous enough in sharing their experiences facing racism in America. And we began to talk about this and understanding what this all meant for us as we all began to grow. Team members expressed empathy and compassion for the pain experienced locally and also nationally. And they expressed support for each other for the broader change that they would like to see. Week after week, I co-facilitated these roundtable discussions with excellent attendance and participation from all team members. They shared their stories about their upbringing, their perspectives, their identities, and these were really some heavy conversations. We all learn from these discussions through listening and sometimes through debate, and all enabled by our ability and willingness to be vulnerable when it mattered most. The beauty about this all was that we never tried to make these conversations perfect. We recognized that none of us were experts in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Now, it happens that what I was doing with my team quickly spread across the university, and under the direction of my then executive vice president, I had the privilege to co-develop a program for her division with 6 cohorts of staff going through training and conversations around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging topics. It was fascinating. What I did learn from this was that too often as leaders, we think we're supposed to be the experts and have everything figured out. But being vulnerable and showing our human side creates a community of followers who connect with us on different levels. And as a society, sometimes we are wired to conceal our vulnerability in response to the feeling of discomfort that comes with it, right? But the problem with this, again, I'll go back to Brené Brown. She points out that we can't selectively numb emotions because when you suppress feelings of fear, shame, and disappointment, you also invariably suppress pleasant emotions such as happiness, gratitude, love, or serenity. And this leaves us lacking in purpose and meaning. So what I learned from this and what I came out from this as a breakthrough in that leadership was that as leaders, we must continue to lean into this very important leadership attribute, as uncomfortable as it might be, because we will become more resilient, brave, and courageous when we fully embrace our own vulnerability.
Wow, that's a lovely story. And it also shows that there were several moments where you embraced vulnerability. And the first one being deciding to create these sessions and associating yourself with these conversations within your team about racism, about racial justice, and all those other things, because there could be an element of judgment from others just because you were initiating that. And there could be judgment from peers, from superiors, but also from your team members.
Absolutely.
So that was the first act of vulnerability. But then once you organize that first session and the subsequent sessions, especially that first session, in order to encourage your team members, and especially the minority ones, to speak up about their experiences, I'm sure you had to share about yours first.
I did. And it was very hard. But it was really what opened up the doors. Because again, I dropped down those masks and I was like, for me to make this be authentic, I had to actually put myself in there as uncomfortable as it was. And I'll tell you that made a lot of difference for my teams. To really see that their leader themselves, I'm bringing myself to these conversations and I'm being open, honest, and authentic as I could be, it made the world of difference.
Absolutely. So let me just go back and comment on the third vulnerability, was to create a program. And probably you had to pitch this program.
Yeah, so my executive vice president heard about this. We talked on my one-on-one. I shared stories with her. I really talked to her about how transforming this was becoming for my team. And she really wanted to get in herself and be a part of it. And so when I did it with her team and her leadership team, it was also very amazing because some really great stories came out from there. And she had a team that was mostly female at the time. And you know how we are as women. We try to hold up our emotions and for fear of being judged. But it was so heartwarming to see how we all brought ourselves to these conversations. And even some of my team members that were male led some of these cohorts and these conversations, because we had been doing it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so they could come in with me and the HR person that I was co-leading and developing this curriculum with, to really take on some of those sessions and really bring, again, some authenticity and some real lived experiences to the conversation, because that is really what really mattered. Because people talked about their experiences on that campus that maybe they had never shared with anyone before. And that was the opportunity for them to really come to the table and share that, knowing that it was going to stay in the room and that people were going to be there ready to wrap their hands around them and comfort them and let them know that it is okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you said, these are conversations that probably never even happened, don't even happen elsewhere for them. So it helps them open up. And because you help them open up, it's such a delicate topic. I imagine that it created a greater sense of trust within the team and with you as their leader. And that probably enabled a lot more of conversations to flow in all sorts of delicate topics and uncomfortable conversations that ultimately create a more inspiring, positive, and even productive workplace for everyone. So I can see how that would have been part of the results that you achieved, and the fact that you're able then to offer this within the university to other areas and other departments. I think that's magical.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Now, going back to your career, you mentioned that you embarked into this IT area, which is heavily male dominated. Usually, there aren't even as many Black females in that area, which is even more challenging. So, what were some of those challenges that you experienced?
Yeah, so that's absolutely on point. So I have had to navigate a predominantly male profession where many times I was the only woman in the room. And imagine compounded effect of being Black, an immigrant, and a woman, right? So I have had to juggle advancing my professional career with being a wife, a mother, a student. And I tell you, it has been hard. But I talk about this and think about Deshauna Barber, who was the Miss USA of 2016. There is something that she said, which is, and it stuck with me. She said, you should not be afraid of failure, but you should be terrified of regret. I decided to take the risks and to chase my dreams and choose to take a chance with my aspirations. As a woman and a woman of color, I had to work 5, 10 times as hard as my white male counterparts to make my way to the top. And again, I had to prove myself more than my white male colleagues. And I fought so hard to show up every day as this strong, confident, unbreakable, unshakable woman in a male-dominated career where many times, again, like I said, I was the only woman in the room. I was always worried about not knowing enough, making a mistake, or being called out, and I would do everything in my power to prove myself. I had to deal with situations where questions were being directed to someone else because the assumption was made that my male colleague was the CIO or the leader. I had to combat the angry Black woman stereotype. I had to deal with micro and macro aggression. I had to deal with unconscious bias. I had to deal with being a person of difference most times in the room. And I was frequently interrupted by my male colleagues and even sometimes have my emotional state commented on or have my judgment questioned. I had to deal with perceptions of my competence and abilities when I had children and having to go on maternity leave, right? I've had to audition for promotions when my male peers didn't have to do any of that. And I felt like I was constantly swimming against the current, right? While my male colleagues were comfortable swimming with the current. I have even been recently attacked by a junior male employee on my staff in a room full of his peers where he questioned the fact that I was being overpaid for the job that I did, where I was preceded by 2 white male whose salaries were never under question, right? Same group, same team. I stood up And in this one instance where this young man was attacking me and talking about the fact that I was being overpaid, I stood up and calmly said that I did not come to this meeting to discuss my salary, but I told him, but if I must, I would like to say that I believe I am appropriately compensated for the work that I do. And the room just went quiet. It's those things where, every now and then you really just have to stand up and speak for yourself. I also recently had one of my direct reports come to me and said, has staff had questions about, they didn't understand what I did as the vice president, and that they used to understand what the two predecessors before me did in this role, but they have a hard time understanding what I did. And yet I have the same job as they did, and even more. And it just felt really interesting that I am expected to provide extra proof of what I do in my role and to really justify my credentials and things like that. Now, what I'll say, Ivna, is that in all of this, I rise up, I survive, I overcome, and I thrive. And I don't let bitterness get in the way of me doing my job, because while these things could be hurtful, they don't define who I am. I make a conscious effort to use all of these roadblocks and barriers as my superpower. Above all, I am also very thankful because I have had great sponsors throughout my career, and I have served myself as a mentor for many as well. And so sometimes when you face barriers like this, like the ones that I face constantly trying to prove myself and just constantly trying to get ahead, the thing I do is I get into this space with the intention of just doing my work and let my work speak for itself. I am not going to apologize to anyone for who I am, how I got to where I got to. I just prove myself by the work I do and the outcomes and the results that I deliver.
Based on the example that you gave on how you responded to that individual questioning your pay, it was a very objective, clear, non-bitter response that just handled the situation. I'd love to hear maybe another one or two examples. You said a couple of things. You said that you had to combat the angry Black woman stereotype. The reason that one stood out is that a lot of people share that they're scared of using their voice because they're going to be told that they're being too aggressive.
So let me talk about the angry Black woman syndrome, because I just was having this conversation with one of my male direct reports the other day. I said to them that throughout my career, I have really combated being tagged with this stereotype, because I am a very passionate person. When I am passionate about what I'm doing, I can get very excited. I can get very animated. I use my hands and all of that good stuff. It is also cultural for me somehow that when we are animated from my culture, we tend to be a little loud. But I realized that for me to not be that way, it is okay for people that are not like me to get animated and get loud and do all of those things and never get judged for it. I observed one time where I was in a room and someone that was really speaking up for themselves got judged because they were passionate about what they were saying and trying to advocate for themselves. And how that was perceived made me feel bad. And so what I decided, and it's one of those things where I have trained myself. When I get to a place where I'm really angry or really not happy about something, the tone of my voice completely changes. I practice that to where, on the contrary, when I am in that state of mind where I'm getting emotional, my tone actually comes down. My tone drops, my inflection of my voice changes. And I have had to do that in order to keep myself and to protect myself from being stereotyped that way. Now, did I have to do that? No. But has it worked for me? Yes. I would say that no human being has to go through that to really train themselves to be at a place where they don't feel like they're being judged when they turn around and look at others and see that others are led to get free with certain behaviors, but you dare not do the same for fear of being tagged something other than. It's just a matter of choice. That's the choice I made, that in my professional setting, I'm never going to let my emotions get out of the way. And when I get really emotional, my tone and my voice really calms down. It drops significantly.
So that's fascinating. When you say your tone drops, does that mean it comes across as more serious? Do you also speak slower?
I
What does
do.
that look like?
I really speak slower. And like I said,
Yes.
I use a lot of hand gestures. I stop, I put my hands down, because
Oh.
sometimes when you use your hand gestures, people look at it like you're being combative or whatever. So I put my hands across my thighs or across my chest, and I just stay grounded. For me, there is some grounding that I have from that. And my tone comes, my tone, like I said, the inflection of my voice. I have trained myself so much that it just happens automatically. I just get into that mode. And a couple of days ago, no, last Thursday, actually, I was talking to my leadership team, and I had a very heavy subject topic that I wanted to talk to them about. And it was around an experience, again, that I just had, that was around unconscious bias. And I wanted to talk to them about it, but to remove myself from it. Again, sometimes I often feel like, because I am a woman of color, when I talk about these topics, the focus becomes on me instead of on the issue. And so I always try to walk that line to make sure that I am separating Monique, the Black woman, from the issue that happened. And so what I did was I stood up and I told them, I am standing up not because I want to be overpowering to them. So I stated my intention. I stated my intent. I said, I am standing up not because I want to be overpowering. I am standing up because what I'm about to talk about is emotional. And I feel like when my feet are on the ground, it gives me some grounding, and I can control myself and I can control my emotions. And so I have some of those things that I have come up with throughout my career that really helps me when I get into that space, so that when I stood in front of them, I calmly delivered the message that I was going to deliver, and they listened. It went through, because I got a lot of feedback after. People reached out to me and said that was deep, but there was no anger in it. Yeah, there were a number of things in that experience that could have made me angry, but I don't think that being angry and expressing anger to them would have been a way to actually allow them to put themselves in my shoes and see what exactly I was going through. But because of the way I had to deliver it, I think it went through. They understood it. They empathized. They felt what it is I was trying to say. And 3-4 days later, I am still having some of them reaching out to me and saying, man, that was a powerful message. And it has opened my eyes to see things that I never really saw. They comforted me with words of kindness. Oh my God, to see you show up every day smiling, not even knowing that these are the things that you've got to deal with. I think they got more appreciation for me as their leader. And also they appreciated my authenticity, because I was very authentic. I didn't mince any words, but I didn't deliver them with any anger. And so I think by doing that, they heard me.
So many great points in that example. The first one being that separation, communicating that separation between yourself and others, because that's absolutely true. When you bring something up that's relevant to you, and you're bringing it up because you know about it, so you're the best person to bring it up. But there's the problem that people might then associate it with you, and so being able to separate that, and then the vulnerability once again, by stating, hey, I want to communicate this and I tend to get emotional. I'm going to share it and I'm going to stand up for this. That's you being vulnerable again, and bringing up the topic is vulnerable once again, right? And vulnerability is authenticity.
Yeah.
And then the stating intention is also crucial, because now those people in the room understand your intention is not to fight. Your intention is not to try to control. And because you paired that with the vulnerability, it really drove the empathy with some people. you trained yourself to use your hands, like putting your hands down or your feet on the ground, like those elements of grounding,
Yeah.
and you conditioned yourself to calm yourself down
Yes.
and change your tone to that more serious tone, calm tone that really makes people take you more seriously.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
So many great tips. And then with that, you found some supporters who really
Absolutely.
understood because you spoke up. When you don't speak up, you cannot find supporters.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you did mention when some of these issues come up that you do seek out help and other things from other people. But what about sponsors? Because it's really hard to get to the level that you've reached without finding sponsors. And I think a lot of women in particular struggle with sponsorship. I think the more elements there are in your case, right? Woman, Black, and immigrant, it's really hard to find a sponsor that looks just like you. And usually that's where sponsors come from. It's someone that they relate to. And so, how did you find your sponsors? How did you attract their attention? How did you differentiate yourself? Because people are not sponsoring everybody, they're picking a few people.
That's true. That's true. I want to start by saying that I am really humbled and proud to say that I sit here or I stand here today as a woman and a leader in technology because someone along the line believed in me, even when I tried to let my fears stand in the way. So let me talk about a few things. Self-confidence, to make no apologies for who I am and what I have accomplished, but to do so with a lot of humility, poise, grace, and leadership as some of the things that I believe have attracted some of the sponsors that I have had throughout my career. If there is any one thing I learned from my dad, is the power of humility and doing so with confidence. I have had some great sponsors throughout my career. When you and I talked initially, I told you that incidentally, most of my sponsors have been white male. And that is because those are the people that are sitting in the boardrooms. Those are the people that are sitting in those places where you need people to advocate for you. I recognize that, and I'm thankful for that. But these are the people in my life throughout my career who were willing to advocate for me in places and speak my name in rooms where I wasn't present, or even endorse me publicly, or invite me to high-profile meetings, and even recommend me for stretch assignments. Those are the people. As I say this, I want to share a story that really shows how the networks you have, how those networks are important in moving you forward, and how some of my networks have moved me forward before. So several years ago, I was at a conference in Chicago. And so I had someone in my network who came to me as we were going through the exhibit floors of the conference. And he said to me, I want you to meet a friend of mine at the end of the day when the conference is over. And I said, today is Super Bowl. I really want to go because I'm a big football fan. I said, I really want to go back to my room and watch the game. I really don't want to go hang out with people. He said, no, I really want you to come with me. I really want to introduce you to someone that I think you would like. I want you to meet this person so badly. And so I agreed to meet his friend in a restaurant in the hotel lobby. And we had lengthy conversations, mostly about my career and what I had accomplished in my career up to that point. This individual really took a lot of interest in me and my career, and I was just fascinated by the whole conversation. Like, I had never met this person before, but they told me, oh, I heard a little bit about you. I said to myself, I don't know what this might turn out to be. So I decided that I wasn't going to shy away from sharing my career goals, my skills, my talent. I said to myself, this might be an opportunity of a lifetime. I don't know what this might bring my way. I wasn't sure where the conversation was going to end, but the one thing I made sure I did was to take advantage of the moment to unabashedly speak up about my achievements as a technology leader. At some point, he shared that they were creating a role for someone to lead technological innovation. Then he asked me if I would be interested in considering applying when the job when the job is posted. I was like, wow, this is how this works. I was like, it was just fascinating to me. And long story short, Ivna, I ended up landing that job as the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at his organization. I realized from that moment the importance of relationships and networks. And I have had relationships and networks for sure. And the one thing that I have learned to do is that with those networks, transparency about my challenges, empathy, compassion, love, and strength that is balanced with an openness again to vulnerability have brought sponsors and opportunities to me. That is really the things that have really attracted some of the sponsors that I have had towards me. I am fully intentional about surrounding myself with leaders who could be my advocates. And something that I do is I frequently examine my network to see who are the people that are in my network and who are my advocates. I also try to look and see if I have a diverse set of advocates inside and outside the organization, right? Because like you said, it is difficult to really find people that look like me in some of those places where I need people to speak up for me or to advocate for me or to be that sponsor. Because again, one thing that we know is that women, and especially women of color, over-mentored and under-sponsored. So a lot of time they talk about mentors for us, but you really hardly hear people talking about sponsors for us. And sponsors are really the people that take you to the next step of your career. And so that's why I frequently examine my network to see who are the people that I have and that there is some diversity of people in my network inside and outside the organization. And I often think about what would happen if my strongest advocate left the organization. So if someone was an advocate for me that was within my organization, I often think about what would happen to me if that person left my organization. And it is something that I have really worked on being intentional about. I do not let my talents go unnoticed. I relentlessly pursue my dreams and I take risks because I have also come to realize that when you take risks, hidden in those risks, some gems that can propel you to unbelievable heights. I often get out of my comfort zone because sometimes it can be very uncomfortable to really go out there and approach someone or seek someone or try to get someone to be an advocate for you. And many times, while sometimes it has happened through networks, sometimes I have actually proactively asked someone and said, would you be a sponsor for me? Here are my career goals. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. Would you be willing, if you see stretch assignments coming up, would you be willing to? I did this when I was at the Colorado School of Mines, and my executive vice president, that's how she ended up letting me serve as her deputy chief operating officer while I was still serving as the chief information officer, because she recognized that I had this talents because I spoke up for myself. We talked about it, and she let me try my hands at it. And so again, what I have learned is that you are your biggest advocate. And I am not afraid of failure. And I choose to embrace and welcome it so I can become the best me.
Wow, phenomenal. You, at times, proactively sought out these advocates for your career and these sponsors. And what you said was you always communicate your goals.
Yes.
And your goals are no small goals, by the way.
No.
You never have tiny little incremental goals.
No, never.
So you're showing these big, ambitious goals and you're asking them, and you said something very specific. You said, would you be willing to recommend me for this opportunity, for this stretch thing, or make this connection? You're not just saying, hey, be my sponsor, but you're giving them the context, you're giving them the direction as to what you want them to do specifically to support you, especially in the beginning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's that whole piece about why it is important to use your voice, because your voice is the most powerful thing that you have. And if you don't use it, then you can't get ahead.
You can't get ahead. And you used it because in this dinner that you were talking about, this individual, and by the way, who was the person who wanted you to have dinner and introduced you to this other individual. Who was that person?
It was someone in my networks. They were a vendor. They were a senior leader in one of the companies whose products I have used in my job. So I had become really connected to this person. They were a senior vice president within that organization, and I had used their products, and he had seen how I had interacted with his team and provided them really useful feedback to improve their product. He happened to also be connected to this individual who he happened to know was looking for someone to come lead technological innovation within their organization. So see how those networks really work?
Wow. Okay. So I'm trying to bridge the dots here. So clearly this person thought very highly of you based on the interactions that you've had. And this person was well connected, which you didn't even properly know who this person's connections was. Did this person, this vendor, know some of your career goals?
He did.
So he knew because you told him.
Oh yeah, we had these conversations all the time. Every time I have an opportunity to have a conversation with someone in a position of power and authority, you're going to be learning about me.
Look at that. And you know what's brilliant? What you learned from your dad, and let's coin this term and let's use it: confident humility.
Exactly.
It's not just humility, it's confident humility. And I get that from you.
Yeah.
There's a confidence in yourself, in your ambitious goals, and talking about this and talking about what you've achieved. And at the same time, maintaining that humility, but not shying away. And this is what I'm reinforcing this word, confident humility, because a lot of women embrace the humility, but they skip the confidence part.
Exactly.
And they delete the confidence part, that part that's actually helping you get ahead.
Exactly.
Hiding it behind the humility, but you're able to find the balance both.
Absolutely. And there is an art in balancing both. And as women, we really need to master that art because there is power in that.
There's a lot of power. And clearly your career is an example of that. Have you ever applied for a job without meeting the criteria?
Absolutely, yes. More than once. But I will highlight one that stands out to me very vividly. In early 2019, as I was getting close to finishing my doctoral studies in organizational leadership with an emphasis in organizational development, I decided that I wanted to get into higher education, into the academy. I didn't know much about this industry other than the fact that I had spent many years in it as a student. And I was at the time working for a software and hardware company. I saw the job posting for a deputy chief information officer at the Colorado School of Mines, which is a really STEM university. That job posting clearly called for years of experience in higher education and other higher education specific experiences, which clearly I did not have and I knew nothing about. But I said to myself, I feel like I had other transferable skills from the industries that I have worked in. So clearly, technology in higher education cannot be different from technology in the software and hardware industry. I said to myself, I would apply for this job. If they called me for an interview, I would do everything in my power to demonstrate to them why I am the best candidate for the role. Lo and behold, I ended up being called for the interview, and fast forward, I got the job. I could have opted to not even try, fearing that I would get rejected. But I did not let the fear of a no deter me, because again, I am one of those people who know that whenever you say no to me, it energizes me to just do more and lights a fire in my belly to really try to find out what I could have done differently to get to where I wanted to get to. So for me, I'm a lifelong learner. And so a no for me means I have something new to learn and I go find it and I learn it. And I started there, and it didn't matter to me that I was going to start there as a deputy CIO, because for me, it was a learning opportunity. I was getting into an industry that I had never been in. And so it wasn't important to me to get in there at the highest levels. It was important for me to get in there, learn the industry, and then begin to develop my career again within that industry. And so I got in there as the deputy CIO, and 8 months into the job, I became the interim CIO. And 3 months later, I became the CIO. So had I not really taken the chance and the patience to tell myself that this is what my goal is. I want to get into higher education, and I'm going to start from somewhere. And I determined for myself that starting as a deputy CIO was okay. It was good enough for me to be able to get some time to learn. And oftentimes, as women, we sell ourselves short and fail to believe in what we're capable of. I try not to rely on the fact that the universe will give me opportunities that I want and deserve. I truly believe that I should go find those opportunities, and I then focus on creating those opportunities for myself, because I know the truth is no one will ever just hand anything to me. My parting words here is that as women, and specifically women of color, we must fight for what we want. And when we are faced with moments when we are passed up or overlooked, we should not be discouraged. We must take it upon ourselves to use our voice and make sure that we are seen for who we are and what we can bring to the table.
Powerful, powerful. The way you see things is no one is ever going to hand something to you. You have to go out there. You said, I need to create it. I need to pursue what I want. The universe is not going to, out of the blue, give you anything, you said. And it's so funny because everybody's talking about the universe, it's just wait, it'll come.
No.
Wait, it's not going to come if you're not doing anything.
No, it's not going to.
There's no magic.
There's no magic.
The universe is not conspiring for everyone to have everything. No. And I love it how you put it. No one's going to do anything. I need to do it. And that's where you keep talking about advocating for yourself, using your voice to own your career.
Yes.
And own what's important to you.
Absolutely.
And that's the mindset that you're carrying behind all of those actions that you shared today. That's driving you forward despite the fear, despite all of those barriers that have come your way, that you described very clearly today.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Monique. This has been fabulous. I think everybody is going to leave with a couple of ideas on how to use their voice to advocate for their careers, be it to seek out a sponsor and be unapologetic in those conversations about your ambitions, as well as how to find that balance of being confident humility, which is phenomenal. How to have those conversations when something's bothering you, but to find and train yourself to ground yourself, to calm and change your tone so that you're not seen as aggressive, but you still can put your point forward and make your arguments and handle a lot of the challenges that we face in our careers, and making your way unapologetically to and having those big goals and never giving up and keep moving in that direction. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Irina. It has been my pleasure to share my story with you, and hopefully your listeners will come away from it with a few nuggets. I am still a work in progress. I learn every day. I cannot say that I have mastered everything. I think there is an opportunity for us to continue to learn. And as a lifelong learner, I look for those moments and those opportunities every day where I can learn and also teach others.
Beautiful. Thank you for teaching us through your stories.
Thank you so much.